Hello and welcome to this latest edition in our webinar series on legacy data warehouse migration. In this episode, we're going to be covering Rethinking Netezza migration, 7 real-world secrets to success. Our presenter is Paul Wolmering, who's the VP of Systems Engineering at Actian. If you have questions for Paul, you can enter them using the chat function, and we'll get to them at the end of the presentation. With that, I'll hand over to you, Paul.
A little bit about me. I run worldwide system engineering at Actian. I've been in the database space for over 30 some years. Worked at Netezza for about 9 years and Formix for 10. Pivotal / Greenplum, Parexel, which had a PADB database and such. I was one of the first solution architects at Netezza and worked on the product lines from Finch, Mercury, Sparrow, the 8000 series, the 10,000 series, and the TwinFin series. So have quite a bit of info on how that stuff works. There's some of my contact information. Feel free to request a LinkedIn, that's fine, and my email at Actian as well. So a little bit about Actian. The company, we have been around for quite a while, 30 plus years. There's well over 3,000 customers using our software, 350 employees worldwide. Our support organization has in-country people speaking the local languages and very high customer satisfaction rating. We have filed 53 some patents in a variety of technologies, mainly in the database space, and they are available to inspect if you wanted to. You can take a look at them. And then 24 of the Fortune 100 use our technologies, and here's a sampling of some of them under the bottom of the slide, and there are plenty more outside of the ones that are listed on the screen. One of the problems with Netezza is there's a lot of sort of potholes you have to be aware of. There's all sorts of nuances to Netezza that you have to take a look at in order to have the migration successful, coming from a Netezza TwinFin, Striper, Mako, over to the Actian offering. Gartner estimates 60% of these things fail, and the goal is to get that as low as you possibly can in terms of failure. And there's a way to do it if you do it the right way. So here are some real world secrets. There's basically 7 of them. The ones that are highlighted in that sort of purplish color are sort of customer driven. The ones that are sort of blue without a border are Actian delivered. And then the ones that are blue with a lighter blue border are basically handled by a strategic partner. And these real world secrets come into play with things like choosing the right platform, getting the right migration tool, choosing a partner that has expertise, the actual movement of the data objects from Netezza to Actian. And then once you get into the cloud in Avalanche, take advantage of what that offers and start making changes accordingly to better service the business and the SLAs. Now, one of the things that Netezza people purchased those boxes was the 3 main tenets of simplicity, value, and performance, plus a few other items that made Netezza very attractive. And with that, the Netezza appliance also had some limitations as well. But this graph illustrates how we've mapped some of those items over to Avalanche, our cloud data warehouse. Things being a fully managed service, from predictable OpEx to 95% off-the-shelf compatibility, and then doing things that like elastic computing and pay-as-you-go. These are some of the things that make the migrations of Netezza to Avalanche a lot easier and a lot less costly. So one of the first secrets of migrating from Netezza to Avalanche is getting an automated assessment tool. This needs to be able to be extract the metadata out of Netezza, inspect all the objects, and then migrate those and convert those over to Avalanche. And it's not just converting data types, but it's converting things like system functions. Is it a one-to-one mapping? Is it an augmentation? Or is there a system function that just simply doesn't exist and needs to be addressed manually? This applies to things like stored procedures, scripts, and SQL in itself. SQL can be embedded in a lot of different things. Scripts, it can be embedded in applications, it can be embedded in XML files. The tool needs to be able to go in there and take a look at all that SQL and then convert it accordingly, so you don't have to. And then not only the inspection of the objects, but then get ready to migrate the data as well. So not everybody can do this by themselves. So a good partner in the SI community can take on a lot of the work and mitigate the risk. Ideally, a partner that has done this before, has done it with the right tool sets, has done it with Avalanche are key. The Actian partner community is quite large, with leading system integrators that are worldwide based, and regional or boutique SIs are capable of doing this as well, including our partner HCL. But the idea behind this is that you don't have to do it solo, or potentially you may not have the resources to do this. So the SI partner can come in and help out accordingly. Now, one of the things to work is migrating schema and data. Not only do you have to move all the objects over, but you also have to migrate the data. You need to do it in a correct fashion. You need to migrate the users and security policies. And one of the things that you need to take a look at is, do you need to move all the data? Quite often after a system is online for a few years, junk data starts to appear in the system. It's data that may not be relevant to the business anymore, or it's just data that's been laying around. So move the data that's necessary to service the business, and then archive that junk data. In addition, minimize the changes to the upstream and downstream applications, because you want to make sure that what is working today will work when you finish your migration. There's a system, an appliance that's been on the floor for 3, 5, 7+ years, has probably grown some pretty deep roots into other systems, and vice versa. You can't just rip it out of the ground and put it into another location. You need to take a look at all the upstream and downstream apps and migrate those or minimize the changes as needed. Now, once you build the Avalanche platform or the target platform, size it accordingly. Just because a single rack, a twin fin holds 100, terabytes of data doesn't mean you need to spin up a 100+ terabyte Avalanche service. Take a look at what applications you're moving over. Maybe you're going to move them over one at a time. So size the appropriate Avalanche environment accordingly, and expand it over time as needed, whether based on peak loads or increased data volumes. That will ensure that the business SLAs are met and the systems are up and running and functional. So lastly, the tool that you choose to help migrate from Netezza to Avalanche should also perform the bulk extract and load or bulk data movement. It's one thing to move schema and scripts. It's another thing to move the actual data. Now, depending on how you are connected to the cloud and your uplink speed, whether it's dedicated from a long haul telecom provider or from the cloud providers themselves like Azure or AWS, you might be able to pull the data out of Netezza and put it into Avalanche using bulk data movement tools for extract and insertion into Avalanche. If that is not practical due to data volumes or potentially the size of your pipe, uplink internet pipe, you could use some of the data movement devices provided by Azure and AWS. And a good example of that would be AWS Snowball, where a secure device is shipped to your data center. You dump the data on that secure device. It's shipped back to Amazon, and the data can be loaded from S3, for example. And then lastly, to modernize your data warehouse, once once it is up in the cloud offers you endless options to adjust this data warehouse in ways that you might not have been able to do in terms of once you're native in the cloud, you can take advantage of the capabilities of the cloud, elastic and cloud bursting. You can even change components under the covers because new services are always being rolled out in the cloud. You can do some unique DR and HR capabilities for your warehouse that you typically couldn't do with an on-prem bare metal solution. So there's you can take a step back and look at what does the cloud offer, and then see how you can modernize your current data warehouse solution. So some of the best practices when it comes to migrating Netezza are things like, you need to estimate the right amount of time and effort for this to be done. You need to understand what the business requirements are. Just picking up a system and dumping it in the cloud potentially won't solve a current business problem. Get in touch with the business, understand what's going on, and estimate how much work and time it'll take. The business may not want everything moved over at once, so phase it over time. Maybe application A followed by B followed by C may be more successful. Maybe there's a high priority application that has to go into the cloud ASAP, followed by less priority applications. I mentioned this earlier. Move the data that the business has value with. The junk data, just archive it. If they need that, you can pull it out of the archives. Maybe you want to archive it on a local storage system, or you might want to just archive it on some cheap cloud store like ADLS or S3 or Glacier. Now, the migration tools, while they sound like they are a silver bullet, quite often they're not. There are a lot of hidden dependencies, a lot of limitations in these migration tools. So you need to understand what are the capabilities of these tools and find out where there might be a gap and how big is that gap. You don't want to embark on a migration and discover that your tool is only doing 65% of the work. That's a big gap to deal with. You should be shooting for 95% plus. This may sound a little silly, but you need baselines from your source system. So when you do migrate over to your target system, Avalanche, you can have some comparison. Are we better? Are we servicing the SLAs better and such? You can't just blindly migrate the data and assume the cloud is going to be faster. You need a reference point to verify and show the business that this new system is in fact performing well. Now the rollback plan is interesting because quite often in a migration you will get issues and they need to be addressed. So as the issues come up, you fix them and you move on. But if issues keep piling up and more issues, maybe because of lack of estimate of time and effort on bullet point number 1, you might come to the point where your migration effort, you're going to miss your due date, or you're going to be in this continuous issue fixing mode. You might want to pull the ripcord and fall back to the on-prem system and reevaluate. That's a tough call to make, but it might be better to take a step back to take 2 steps forward. And then you need to, once everything's been migrated up to cloud, you need to confirm that up and downstream systems are functioning properly. Are the feeds coming in correctly? Are the data values coming out of the system accurate and spot on? And then downstream systems, are they picking up whatever downstream data you're sending? Those are items that need to be looked at from a best practices point of view. So bringing it back to Actian, Actian offers a solution from edge to cloud. We have databases that run on the edge, whether it's a vehicle, a phone, a thermostat, a Linux Windows box, and that can consume data and then feed it back to Avalanche. And Avalanche has the ability to be a multi-cloud offering, Azure and AWS, for example, or it can run on-premise. So you get the ability to move into the cloud at your speed. Maybe you want to move one application up to the cloud, followed by a couple, and maybe 3 or 4 remain on premise. That's the idea of a hybrid approach. And then give the users, whether they're data scientists, data engineers, or analytics people, the ability to run hybrid queries within this environment. And then further downstream, there's also the OLTP capabilities of ActianX, if in fact that is something that's a downstream system. All of this is available from Actian to help you solve your problem. Just a little bit about the migration paths. If Netezza was on the left side of the screen, you can do a phased or lift and shift approach into a variety of environments. You can go into a multi-cloud world. You can do a combination of on-prem or multi-cloud, or you can just move off of Netezza to a solely on-prem system. Maybe your data just cannot go to the cloud, but you need to get off that Netezza box because it's going into obsolescence, or it was architected for an environment 5 years ago that has changed dramatically over time. And you can also push this data into other external data sources if needed. So the key thing about this slide is it gives you options, and you're not forced to do one thing or the other. It's a very flexible architecture depending on where you're going in the cloud or staying on-prem or both. And just a little bit about the actual architecture of the Avalanche service. We have a variety of applications for business analysts, the data scientists, data engineers, talking to the service in a variety of protocols from ODBC, JDBC, .NET, Kafka, so on and so on. We have inside the compute components of Avalanche standard ANSI SQL. We do vector algebra, or the ability to do like 10,000 operations in one machine cycle versus 10,000 machine cycles. Real-time updates that don't affect performance of the system, so you can be running updates while people are running queries. Columnar and great query optimization with federated queries. The storage of Avalanche can be in a variety of environments: HDFS, ADLS on Azure, EBS or S3 on AWS, and we have very good tight integration with Spark, both for loading data. Spark jobs can consume data from Avalanche and vice versa, and we run anywhere. We run in the cloud, we run on Linux, VMware, anywhere you typically want to. It's all available inside the Avalanche service. These are some of the customers that are using the Actian products, and there's a variety of those. Lufthansa uses Actian for flight operations to make sure that there's all the operational bits that a plane needs in order to take off is in place. They wrote that application, embedded Actian, and they've resold it to multiple airlines. ADP doing payroll for employees within the U.S. We also have companies like Thomson Reuters that is doing financial work with extremely high performance queries. The queries can't take longer than 20 milliseconds, and a variety of others. This is just a sampling, and we have far more customers that we can talk about, but that would take quite a while. But these are just a sample. So I want to conclude by thanking you. And like I said in the beginning, I had my contact information and email. If you want to reach out via LinkedIn or send me an email, I'm happy to help out and answer any questions you have, or come out and visit you and talk about Actian. So I'm going to finish there, and I'm going to hand it back to Pradeep. And once again, I thank you for your time. Take care.
Okay, so we have a couple of questions in already. Just to remind the audience, you can enter the questions using the chat function on the right of your screen. The first one is about this customer, they also have Oracle databases, and they want to know if we have a migration capability for those databases.
Yes, we do. We have, outside the Netezza box, so to speak, yes, we have migration capabilities for existing Oracle and Oracle systems, and in addition, Teradata as well. So we have the knowledge, the know-how, and the technology to migrate. And one of the things when we migrate from one architecture to another, architecture is, I'll just call it, it's Oracle's architecture. So you need to take a look at what you built. You need to take a look at what the existing architecture is and does, and make sure that you're migrating it to a new platform such as Avalanche in a way that it will be successful. Just picking up an existing architecture and putting it in another architecture sometimes does not work too well. So we've got the expertise and the knowledge to take a look at that and know exactly what to do when it comes from Exadata into Avalanche.
There's a question about sizing Avalanche. How easy is it to grow your compute?
Yep.
Compared to Netezza?
Yeah, the nice thing about Avalanche, and I mentioned this earlier on, it's sized by what we call Avalanche Units, and an Avalanche unit is roughly about a half terabyte in size. And so, if you look at your current application, you may have a one rack Mako, for example. You would size the Avalanche environment based on the application you're bringing over. You don't have to size it to the direct, the physical size of that Netezza rack. You could size it to what you need for the application on day one of production. And then you can grow that Avalanche cluster in size based on your growth, your changes in the business, your changes in data feeds. And we scaled up Avalanche well into the petabyte size on well over 1,000 nodes. So this has the scalability to play in the petabyte space without issue, but you have the luxury of paying what you use and doing small granular increments to the Avalanche service, so your OpEx will grow gradually over time versus the old days in Netezza. You started out with one rack and then you had to buy another rack to expand. We've shrunk that down substantially.
There's a question about manageabilities. Someone likes Netezza because it's an appliance model, so there's less administration. How does managing Avalanche compare?
One of the nice things that Netezza did when that came out was it was simple to use, and in that space in the 2000s of where they changed the game. What we've done here at Actian with the Avalanche fully managed service is we've done the same thing, except we've done it in the cloud. In that it's a fully managed service, meaning we've already pre-configured exactly what is the right balance for the Avalanche service. We know the right level of compute, storage, network, and so on, and memory. Plus, we've also, the software underneath has been optimized and tuned. So when we set up these new services for people, they don't have to worry about, how many cores do I need, or what type of instance should I use? That's all been taken care of. So from that perspective, it's very easy to use. And then on the other side, it's fully managed service. So we're taking care of items such as, backup and restore, DR, operational things like monitoring, compliance, security, threat detection. We're taking care of all of the patches that come out of all the technology stacks, so you don't have to worry about that. And that leaves the user with the ability to do the DBA work that they want to do, and data model and load data and hook up apps and so on. Under the covers, we're doing everything for you behind the scenes, and that's the fully managed service that's offered in the cloud. And if you wanted to run Avalanche on-prem, you would have to pick up, of course, some of those tasks like backup and restore, but the software itself is extremely easy to use.
Great. Thanks, Paul. I don't see any other questions coming in, so we can end it there. That was a great answer, and thanks everyone for attending, and Paul for doing such a great presentation. With that, we'll end. Thanks very much, everyone, and goodbye.
Thank you. Bye.